Consistency might not sound sexy or exciting, but it's what makes leadership trustworthy. When we're inconsistent, even with good intentions, we create uncertainty. People don't know what to expect. Energy gets spent second guessing instead of moving forward. And eventually, trust gives way to hesitation and momentum stalls. And here's what's interesting. We don't lose influence all at once. It's not one data point, one experience that undermines that influence. It's consistent data points that are inconsistent, that communicate inconsistency, that actually drive this diminishing of influence. It fades when people experience us as unpredictable. One day we're energized and clear, the next we're distracted or reactive, and without realizing it, we've made our leadership hard to follow. And that's not just our emotions or our energy or our clarity or our focus. At what time we show up to the office, when do we host a meeting, how long are those meetings, what's the structure of those meetings, right? These are all elements as leaders to consider whether we're operating with a level of consistency that people feel like they can trust, right?
Yeah, that really lands, Eric. And let me tell you, I've worked with leaders that are great at consistency, and I've worked with leaders that struggle with consistency. And those leaders who struggle with it, they don't often even realize that they're sending these mixed signals. But let me tell you, the team, we felt it. We felt that sense of unpredictability, like which way are we going today? What are we showing up for? So tell me your thoughts on this. How does inconsistency actually affect trust and performance? Because I have felt it as a team member.
Yeah.
What's actually underneath that? What's actually affecting the trust and performance of the team?
Yeah, it's really good. Well, before I jump into answering that or processing that question, which is a really good question, I want to recognize for our listeners that there is an element of nature versus nurture, right? Through different assessments, like Myers-Briggs is one of our favorites. It's an oldie, but still a goodie. We understand that people are wired differently and want to engage life differently. So, for example, my wife is painfully consistent in the way that she shows up, in the way that she wants to schedule her day. She likes things organized, right? She's clear about the mission that she's on, what she wants to accomplish, what are the goals and objectives. She wakes up with like a to-do list in her head. Me, not even close. I'm like the other side of this continuum where I prefer to fly by the seat of my pants. I'm comfortable being flexible. I'm comfortable adapting, pivoting, changing direction, turning left, turning right, finding a way forward. And both are incredible strengths when it comes to how we operate, but recognizing that our natural wiring and temperaments, for some of us, will actually communicate natural consistency, but if we're not careful, can become rigidity.
Yes.
Earlier. And people who are wired more like me, right? Problem solvers, creative, can adapt quickly, can flex to find solutions. That's also a strength, but if we're not careful, can start to feel like it's overly abstract and there's no way to kind of pin someone like me down. For the imagery that I love providing for people when I'm going through this with our clients is I draw a picture of clouds and the ground.
Yes.
And then I draw a little picture of a balloon. And I say, isn't that balloon with some helium beautiful? It's floating around in the sky. It's at 30,000 feet or whatever. It's enjoying this kind of
Really powerful balloon, 30,000 feet.
I'm just metaphorically speaking, maybe 100 feet, 50 feet. But the point is, I said, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that fun to see a balloon floating around in the sky?
Mhm.
Like it's almost like watching a bird fly. You're like, an amazing perspective that you. Yeah. However, if that balloon doesn't have a string that's tied to the ground somewhere, an anchor point, person holding it, then that balloon really becomes more subject to the prevailing winds and the temperatures and the air movements, and becomes like, where is it going to go?
Yeah.
And where is it? Maybe it's going to float away. We don't know. Right. And so there are some people that are more comfortable being the balloon up at however many feet, and they enjoy that broad, big perspective, and other people are more comfortable. They want to be the one holding the string and anchoring the way we think and operate and behave and make decisions. And both are radically important. So that's what I want to say to our listeners. Both are equally important, but knowing which one you tend to lean toward is really helpful in this conversation.
Mhm.
So back to your question, inconsistency creates emotional uncertainty. When our tone, direction, or availability shifts without explanation, that's a key phrase, without explanation, people spend energy bracing for the
Yeah.
impact that's going to have on them instead of contributing. We might not mean to be unclear, but what we model becomes the message. Oh my goodness. And
Yeah.
I didn't learn this for years as a young leader in my 20s and early 30s. I did not realize how much the way I operated was sending a message that I did not want to send to the people on my team.
Mhm.
Um, and when that message keeps changing, the team stops moving because trust is eroding. And it's not trust in somebody's character or are they a good person or do they mean well? Remember, we're not talking about intentions,
Yeah.
right? People respond to us not on the basis of our intentions, but by the prevailing experience they have when we're in any environment.
Yeah.
If people can't count on our presence, the way we show up, how we operate when we're present, they'll start pulling back their effort.
Yeah. And, I think this is a really crucial transition for leaders going from that entrepreneurial phase where they do have to embody that flexibility, that, ingenuity, that
Yeah.
creativity. They have to be able to turn on a dime. Like those are some of the skills that get you through that entrepreneurial phase. And yet, when you start to build a team because
Yeah.
you've made it through the entrepreneur phase, those same skills are what can be your downfall.
Yes. Yes.
And so as leaders, we need to pay attention. I find always, but especially in some of those crucial growth moments as we're going from solopreneur to team or small team to large team,
Yeah.
this becomes even more impactful for those around us. So when we think about this, then how do we build consistency? Especially because we want to acknowledge any of us in leadership knows we constantly are experiencing curveballs. So it can feel sometimes as a leader almost impossible to be consistent when you as a leader never really know what's going to come at you
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. It's such a great question. Well, I said this before we jumped on to record the podcast. Don and I were reflecting, and I was saying, "Man, my gosh, this is a story of my life and leadership." In my younger years, I leaned very heavily into my natural preferences and wiring and temperament, um, and so yeah, I was able to leverage. I'm a natural visionary, and I know how to get people excited about where we're going and what we're fighting for. And there's this mission, and there's purpose and significance. We all get to be a part of this journey, and I'm very comfortable shifting, adapting, pivoting in those early startup phases of anything, whether it's a business or a project. And yet I know that at a certain point, the experience for the people around me was a level of inconsistency that was undermining their ability to follow me and trust me. They become reluctant. I mean, the imagery I know we talked about is, when we're driving down the freeway, there's a sense in which cars are moving at very high speeds. And why is it that there aren't more accidents than there already are?
Mhm.
Well, because there are laws and rules and parameters and expectations and boundaries on a freeway that people subscribe to, submit themselves to,
Yeah.
so that everybody can get to where they're going more safely. But what happens when all of a sudden we just, without even thinking about it, we just jerk the wheel and we move into a new lane and we cut somebody off? What is the experience that person has? Well, one of two experiences. Either one, we're going to get really upset and flip them the bird and tell them where they could go with their cutting us off. There was an injustice. How could they have done this? Right.
Yeah.
But I know for myself, a lot of times I'm like, whoa, that felt unpredictable. And so I back way off of that person for fear that they're going to make another erratic.
Yes. You don't know what's going to happen next.
So that is just to maybe help our listeners have a more visceral experience of what people feel with us. Or I'm sure we all have our stories of leaders we work for that we felt this with them, where we felt like, gosh, you know what? I don't think you mean to impact me this way, but by virtue of how you're operating, you are impacting the environment this way. And it creates a real sense of feeling unsettled, disorientated, because as human beings, we're naturally wired to seek some level of security and stability that comes from predictability.
And I would say too, for our team members, they're now wasting precious energy wondering what you're going to do next, instead of, like, that's where we see the motivation leak. That's where we see the gap in performance, is because some of their energy is diverted to wondering how you're going to show up, or wondering if you're going to change lanes on them suddenly, as opposed to just being able to focus on their lane and keep moving at the fastest clip they can.
Well, we know that feeling, right? When you're on the freeway and people are moving lanes because there's traffic and everyone's kind of suddenly acting very erratically. What happens? Well, I was listening to music. I was listening to a podcast. I was thinking about where I'm going and the conversation I'm going to have or what I'm trying to accomplish. And all of a sudden now all of your energy gets reallocated to this immediate sense of urgency of like, oh my gosh, I have to protect myself. I have to stay out of harm's way in this situation, right? We've all had that experience.
Yeah.
That's a great insight. Thank you, Dawn. So I'm very thankful to have spent time with a particular mentor for a number of years who was painfully predictable. That's what I would tell people. I said, whether you like what he does or agree with him on anything, he is painfully predictable in his best and worst qualities. And I believe he had more good qualities than bad qualities, but he was painfully predictable. And he was the one that first started to kind of call this element out in me. Like, hey, Eric, I'm not asking you to give up these other qualities of who you are, but I am suggesting that for you to lead at a more significant level, you have to learn how to create an environment that feels more predictable, secure, stable, so that people feel like they can follow you. And that rocked my world, because it was not only in the workplace I was experiencing this reality, I was experiencing it in my marriage, with my kids, with friends, with whoever, clients, because I was not operating with a quality of predictability. And I learned from this mentor that the power of what he called predictable patterns, or what we call rituals or routines, disciplines. I like predictable patterns. They sound nice. Discipline never sounds nice to someone like me. That's essentially what we're talking about. It's a discipline. Okay, I'm going to get up at this time in the morning. I'm going to do X, Y, or Z first thing when I get up. I'm going to eat or not eat this kind of breakfast in the morning. I'm going to have 2 cups of coffee. I'm going to show up to work at this time. Whatever it is, I'm going to take this route on my way to work. I'm going to date my wife once a week. I'm going to date my kids once a week. We're going to talk about finances, every Sunday night, to make sure we're on the same page, reflecting on the past week, going into the forward. I'm just giving examples of as my wife and I were under this couple's mentorship, and they were introducing us to this concept of the reason your marriage and your life feels erratic and unstable is because you guys have not implemented the necessary predictable patterns that provide a few benefits. Number one, it provides the security and stability of knowing what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, where you're going to be, where they're going to be, how are we going to operate, right? Like it takes away the guessing game. I mean, there's a reason why Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every single day. Because he's like, I'm burning up so much brain power trying to figure out what outfit to wear every morning. I'm just going to choose the same outfit. That's my predictable pattern, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
Right. And even choosing, I'm going to wake up for 30 minutes before early, so I can choose a creative outfit. That's a predictable pattern.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, it's what you're going to give your time and energy toward, with the expectation, here's the second part, of a return on that investment. Predictable patterns is essentially an investment strategy. How do I want to invest my time, energy, and resource with the expectation of a return?
Yeah.
So dating my wife on a weekly basis in our younger years, there was an expected return. We'd have certain conversations, we'd process certain things, we'd hang out, connect. Whatever we did, there was a return on that. We're going to build connection. With my kids, the same thing, talking about finances every Sunday night when we were in our earlier years. Our team, we have Monday morning meetings via Zoom, because we're all mostly remote. It's just these predictable patterns, but what's the return we want? So number one, it provides security and stability, because we know where we're going to be, what we're going to do. We're not waking up every morning asking this question, What am I doing? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, it gives us a chance to begin to have expectations of the return and to measure, are these investments in fact giving me this particular return?
Yeah.
And then number three, coming back to the conversation today, this creates an environment where people feel a greater degree of security because it does not feel frenetic. It does not feel wishy-washy. It does not feel like we're going to be making left-hand turns without knowing it. Like we just know. Like to this day, I still have on my calendar on Thursday evenings, I take my son or my daughter out on a date on the calendar. Now, does it happen every week of the year? No. Well, now they're in college, so they're away from school. Maybe I go take them out at their college because they're close by. Whatever the case is, we can evolve our patterns. But having those in the calendar, knowing when I'm going to work out, when I'm going to play golf, when I'm going to hang out with my family, knowing when we're going to have dinner, knowing these things creates an environment where people are no longer using that mental margin, wondering what's going to happen next. And therefore, they have increased mental, emotional, and physical resource to give to anything that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let me just pause there and just kind of hear what you're connecting with, and then I'll jump back into what I wanted to share.
Yeah, I heard a speaker a long time ago. He was a leader, but the super creative type. And he gave this example that kind of rocked me. I was younger at the time. And he said, boundaries, which is the same idea that we're talking about here, right? Disciplines, routines, patterns, actually create the opportunity for more creativity.
Yeah, oh, I like that.
Because we aren't using that mental margin, but we know these are the bounds that I'm operating in. Now I get to, as you were saying, flex and see what works and tweak here and there. But without those boundaries, it's actually just chaos.
Yep.
And so that was really helpful for me as somebody who does identify as a creative to say, okay, creating boundaries or disciplines or predictable patterns, which can sometimes feel constricting to a person like me, actually allows me to operate with greater creativity, greater intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, I'm going to get that ROI that I'm looking for, as opposed to just haphazard life, which I can want to do.
Yeah. And I think the fear that predictable patterns will rob us of opportunities. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, if I'm already committed to this, I don't know what else is out there, especially, our personalities.
Yes.
However, what it does is actually create more opportunity for us, I think, in the long run, which is very difficult for people. But we have to remember, in creating predictable patterns, they're meant to serve us. We're not meant to serve them.
That's right.
So they're only as good as they are helping us get the desired ROI from that particular routine or discipline. And so we get to shift. We get to recalibrate those. We get to change them completely when we want, right? Because life is changing, seasons of life changing. So, when we were first married, no kids, we had certain predictable patterns. Then when we had kids, and then as I learned this concept, I was like, oh my gosh, okay. In every context of life, seasons come and go, life changes, but it's those predictable patterns that give us a chance to provide a kind of through line for how we want to invest our time and energy. So let me just say, as leaders need predictable patterns or routines. And that doesn't mean rigidity. It means intentionality. Set a standard for how you want to show up and how you want to operate in your home life, work life, wherever. Define your follow through. Build patterns your team can count on. And when something needs to shift, name it and then offer clear turn signals. Hey, we're going to change this. We're going to start doing this a little bit different. Or, hey, I'm not available this week for that meeting. We need to give people clear turn signals. When we give turn signals, like, for example, I lived in South Carolina for 10 years. What I loved about that. One of the things I loved, you could be in the heaviest traffic. If you put your turn signal on, people slow down to let you in. Because it was like, hey, thanks for letting me know that you want to come into this lane, which I was occupying. But hey, you know what? Because of the turn signal, come on in, let's do this. And I think it must be nice. Came back to California and was like, what just happened? Was terrified to drive on the freeways for the first 6 months. But the point is, those turn signals are really important so that people, again, aren't guessing. They're not having to, what we call gap fill, trying to interpret, why is this different? Why did he show up late? Why is he not showing up anymore? Why did we change this? Why did we pivot here? The turn signals let everybody know, hey, we're going to make a change. Now that you're aware of it, you don't have to second guess why we're making this change or what it is. We all know we're on the same page. And again, that provides that experience of stability and security within any environment.
I like that. And that's what keeps them from becoming rigid. And it also keeps them from, it keeps us from being haphazard and throwing our team for a loop.
Yep. So some phrases for our listeners that they might find helpful. And maybe one phrase is more than the other. And so we talk about learning to live in the tension between the organized and the organic. We need systems and structure, but only to the degree that they serve the organic growth of whatever it is that we're fighting for. And we have structure and spontaneity, right? These are the tension points. Most people think either or. No, it's both and. We need structure and spontaneity. We need framework and freedom within that framework, right? There's probably other word pairs people could think of, but those are the word pairs that I've used over the years to help me remember I want to contribute to an environment that has both, and that we never choose one over the other. We're always learning to live in the tension between the two because they are both incredibly important. Now, I know we want to talk about some practical examples of where we've experienced this. And before the call, I mentioned what first came to my head was probably the experience that you and other team members here at Empower Coaching were having in the last year or so, as we were going through a lot of transitions and changes. And so here's what I would love to do. I'm just going to own for our listeners that under a radical amount of pressure, I defaulted to either or. I defaulted, what's most comfortable for me is I'm going to go back into my entrepreneurial mindset, and I'm just going to be like, we're going to try this and that. We're going to pivot here. We're going to change this. And I was doing this so often, and it had an impact on the team. So I want you to share from your perspective, and then I'll come back around on the other side and kind of reflect from my view. But what was that experience like for you? And how did we get from where we were then, which was a real feeling of insecurity and instability, to today, where it seems like we are all experiencing a far greater degree of that, of stability?
Yeah. Interestingly, so as we have alluded to, you and I have similar wirings, and I have been a part of the Empower team for our listeners for about 3 years in different capacities. And our organization did go through a significant transition about 2 years ago ish. Yeah. And so in the beginning of that transition, it was like, yeah, let's put on that entrepreneur hat. Let's shift. We're going to be, trying out new things. We're going to be figuring it out. And that is okay and necessary for certain seasons. But what happened over time is that as a team member, I felt like I lost my momentum because I was not always certain where we were going. That was one experience I had. But the other, I think, more troubling experience was I would be running after what I thought was the goal that we had set. And so maybe for 6 weeks, 3 months, I'm running after this goal, putting my time, energy, talents, all of that. And then all of a sudden, you had a new idea, and the destination suddenly changed. And so all of that work and energy that I'd done for however long was all useless in a lot of ways. Now we're going in another direction. And even that was okay the first couple of times. But when it started happening consistently, it was like, at what point do I stop putting all this out? Like, how do I don't trust that we're actually going where he says we're going.
Yeah, that all the effort you put into one direction is actually going to pan out to anything.
Correct.
Because I'm gonna yank the steering wheel, right, and cross 3 lanes on the freeway in high speed traffic and say, we're going here now. Yeah.
And then I know from your experience of that, I'm sure as a leader was frustrating because it felt like I was pulling back.
Yep.
And as a team member too, it felt like I was never able to win at something. And that just it created a sense of distrust in a lot of ways, I think, from both sides
Yeah.
of you going, why isn't Dawn performing? And me going, I don't know what I'm supposed to be delivering.
Yeah.
And it felt like it was like we have gleaned so much learning from that season, but in that season, it felt like a lot of wasted time and energy.
So now describe for us what changed. What was the breakthrough that you felt like kind of recalibrated how we operate that has gotten us to where we're at today?
Yeah. I think the beginning of that breakthrough was just some honest conversations
Oh,
and me reflecting to you, like, here's how I've been feeling as a team member. But then the real breakthrough came when you committed to allowing our team to hold you accountable for staying in the lane.
yeah. Yeah.
Because it can be, it's tricky when you're the CEO of our organization. You tell us what to do. And in a lot of ways, like in most organizations, it's like, okay, well, let's do that.
Mm.
And so but then to be given permission to push back and say, no, Eric, that's not where you said we were going.
Right.
Let us remind you that this is where we're going. And for you as a leader, as the leader, to submit to that, I think that was the crucial change. You gave us permission to stay the course and to hold you accountable for it. And you submitted yourself to our authority, in a sense, in that way.
Yeah. I love that. Wow. And so now, months and months later, how would you describe the difference of what we're experiencing or what you're experiencing now? What is it like now on the other side? Because I think our listeners need to hear, like, there is another side of this journey, right? Because it can all sound like, oh, we have hard conversations, and then we did start to practice these things with each other. But what is the experience today, versus them?
I think, well, from my perspective, I'd love to hear your reflections after this, but from my perspective, there's been so much trust built because we have been able to work at the same thing in one direction for a long enough time that we're now starting to see some of that payoff.
Yeah, the wins. Yeah,
the wins. You are starting to see some of that, which I think builds trust in your team. Like, oh, they do know what they're talking about. And we are starting to experience the trust of, we can keep fighting, we can keep trying, because we know that one failure or one misstep doesn't mean Eric's going to pull the rug out from under us.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the fruit that has borne for our team is the ability, as we say on our team, to try things and refine them.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we're going in the same direction, it has increased our ability to take risks, to be creative, to take chances, to try new things in the service of the larger vision.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah. So thank you for saying it that way. These are some of the benefits you're experiencing now, especially juxtaposing those with what you shared about, times in the past. I think is really powerful because it ties back in, like, actually by being more predictable, it actually creates opportunity for greater creativity and imagination and risk taking and stuff. And what's interesting, I can share so much on this, but I'll just dial in on this one reflection from my perspective. In my earlier years of leadership, I found it very difficult to build anything that was sustainable and scalable.
Yeah.
Because my natural wiring is vision, pivot, try new things, pivot. And so I always had a hard time building a team that could actually build the actual organizational aspects, the business aspects that become the engine that drive the vision, the mission.
Yeah.
Then I partnered with my wife, who I already said is the opposite of me in this, for years. And together, that partnership, me submitting to her in terms of her holding my feet to the fire, this is where we said we're going to go, this is what we want to fight for, be patient, stick to it, we're not pivoting. and then her trusting me that like this vision, this mission of whatever we're fighting for is like worth it. Let's go. Like literally, I remember experiencing both the pain of that tension, the discomfort of it, but also seeing the radical reward on the other side of the fact that my wife and I were able to partner in building a lot of amazing things over the years. And so in this season where my wife is not a part of this team, and I think what happened is under extreme pressure with you guys, with my current team, I defaulted back to who I was in my youngest years. Like mentally, if you'd asked me, I know the value of having people that can push back and hold your feet to the fire and keep you on course. And I know I need that, but under extreme pressure, I just defaulted to what felt most familiar to me.
Absolutely.
And quite honestly, really did run the risk of losing this team, and which would have been terrible, would have been a powerful learning experience for me. That's how I've learned most things through life, is through my mistakes. But I'm so grateful that we were able to have those conversations, determine how we want to operate so that we can live in the both and, right? Of the framework and the freedom, the structure and the spontaneity, the balloon and the string tied to an anchor point. And I would agree with you. I feel that trust has been built through that. We've been able to accomplish more in the last 9 months than I think we've accomplished in the last few years as it relates to certain parts of our business. It feels like there's a level of ownership that you all have now that, quite frankly, I was probably just afraid to give away for fear that, you guys would take off or something. It's some of my past trauma points that I've had to work through, but really grateful that we've been on this journey, and really grateful to hear you in this podcast session right now, just even sharing it. I'm like, it makes me feel incredibly emotional to feel like, oh, we did do the hard work. We got the breakthroughs. We're experiencing the benefits on there's going to be more battles and more breakthroughs and we go after. But as it relates to this issue of predictability and stability, I'm really grateful for what we're all experiencing in this season.
And I want to point out, I think your vulnerability in this is so powerful, because as leaders, we are going to experience times of great pressure. And it is only natural in those moments. It's our natural wiring that we are going to default to what feels most comfortable. We can know every leadership strategy out there. We can know everything about our company. And yet, in those moments of incredible pressure, our brains just take us back to what feels safe and or what has worked before. But most often, what worked before, what worked to get us here, no longer works to get us there. And that's when we need to take those moments, understanding that where we are is a difficult season, and start to put into practice some of the tools that we know to keep moving forward.
100%. Yeah. And that's really part of the power of our leadership operating system, is it provides tracks for people to run on, so that we're not having to reinvent the wheel over and over and over and over again. And I know that toolkit has served all of us incredibly well as we've navigated and negotiated some of these challenges. Let's shift gears real quick. I know that we've been on this for a bit. Just for our listeners, just like, what do we do today? How can we take what we're learning today and begin to apply it to our life and leadership? And, real simple, I would just recommend to our listeners, as you and I practice on a regular, which is to do the work to identify where in life are we showing up inconsistently. And sometimes that requires a degree of honesty and humility to let other people give us that feedback.
Sure does.
Like you did at that Starbucks, that, on that one first session. And to resist the temptation to blame or to become a victim, and to say, okay, I'm clearly not impacting the environment the way that I want to. So what are multiple predictable patterns that I can put into place that will create a more stable and secure experience for the people around me? Because, there's an old adage, you're only a leader if there are people following you. And very often as leaders, I think because of our title, our position in an organization, we just expect, well, I'm the boss. I'm the leader. I started this. I'm in charge. And so you should follow. And it's like, no, they shouldn't follow because of that. Right. That is not the basis upon which we want people following our leadership. We want people following our leadership because of our willingness to do the work to build environments that feel predictable and safe and secure. Because the world around us is so unpredictable and so insecure that somebody has to step up and say, then how do I create an environment in which people can experience that and operate well in the face of all of the world's insecurity and instability?
And truthfully, that serves us as much as it serves the people around us.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to remind our listeners to, again, I feel like we say this all the time, and I hope that you hear it in our own stories, that leadership isn't about perfection.
Yeah.
It's about being somebody that your team can rely on. And it's about having the tools so that when you recognize inevitably that you have gotten knocked off track, that you know how to get back on track and you know how to create that consistency even when the pressure is on.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, to all of our amazing listeners, thank you again for joining us. It is a privilege and honor to share out of the overflow of our own journeys. We haven't perfected all this yet, but we are radically committed practitioners to the things that we're discussing. Next week, we're going to be talking about something we all wrestle with, which is what to do when insecurity, or what we call the imposter syndrome, starts to creep into our mindset, our thinking, our attitudes, and our behaviors. As always, if this episode was helpful, please subscribe, click, like, comment, all the above, and share with somebody that you think might be helped by this conversation. But we'll look forward to seeing you in our next episode.